The Entrepreneur's Library, episode 122.
Welcome to the Entrepreneur's Library, the only book-centric podcast that reviews all the top-selling business books and shares authors' perspective firsthand. This is your resource to finding the next great book that will enable you to grow personally and professionally. Welcome your host, Wade Danielson.
Welcome back to the EL. Today we have Dick Axelrod, author of Let's Stop Meeting Like This, Tools to Save Time and Get More Done. Entrepreneurs that are listening right now, this is a fantastic book. I've read hundreds of books, and I'm not sure if I've ever read one that was particularly on or specifically on the productivity of your meetings. If you ever are meeting with different individuals, and that's what this book is about. And Dick does a great job of breaking down one of his strategies or one of his concepts called the meeting canoe. And he'll talk more about that. So without further ado, let's jump right in. Welcome, Dick, and thank you for joining us on the Entrepreneur's Library.
Thanks for having me.
Will you take just a moment before we take a deep dive into the book and introduce yourself? Tell us just a little bit about you personally.
Yeah, I can think of my life in sort of three different categories. I teach crisis leadership at the University of Chicago. My wife, Emily, and I have a consulting firm where we basically focus on high participation organizational change. And I'm an author, and I've written several books on organizational change. And our latest book is the one we'll be talking about today, Let's Stop Meeting Like This, Tools to Save Time and Get More Done.
And Dick, how is that book done so far?
We're really pleased. It came out in August of this year, and it's been reviewed in Fast Company. It's been reviewed in Inc., in Forbes. We were listed as a hot new release on Amazon, so we couldn't be happier. And we're getting lots of, kind of people contacting us about it. So we're just really excited and pleased about the whole thing.
That's fantastic success. So thank you for sharing that. And now let's jump right into the book. Let's Stop Meeting Like This, which was made available for purchase back in August 2014. So not that long ago.
No.
And Dick, we're going to move quickly, but we're here to cover the top question that our reader/listener would like to get answered. And the first one is, what was the inspiration behind writing Let's Stop Meeting Like This?
Well, we can actually go a couple places. One was our son, who happened to be a professional ski instructor, excuse me, in Breckenridge, Colorado. And one day he calls and he says, "Hey, Mom and Dad, you know that meeting canoe?" And the meeting canoe is a major framework in the book. So, that thing you've been teaching, I've been using that as a framework for my ski lessons, and I'm now the most requested instructor on the mountain. And guess what? I've been teaching it to my friends, and they're moving up in the rankings as well. And the sort of dirty secret about ski instructing is the more you get requested, the more money you make. So, he was pleased about that. We were pleased about that. And, we had a couple experiences with Dave and with our clients where they would just off the cuff say, we've adopted this model, and we thought we had something. And then one day I was coaching the person, and he said to me, we do everything all the meeting books say we should do about meetings, and they're awful. So, and I thought to myself, I think I know why. And that kind of pushed us over the edge in terms of writing the book, because the one thing we didn't want to do was write another boring book about meetings.
So let's jump into that. Let's go a little bit deeper into that, because there are a ton of books on meetings. So what makes your book different from others regarding the same or similar topic?
Well, one thing we think about is that meetings are work. And not many people conceptualize meetings as work. And once you make that leap and say meetings are work, then if you apply good work design principles to that meeting, the notion of, excuse me, my voice this morning, autonomy, meaning, challenge, learning, and feedback, which are the same factors that contribute to motivating work. If you start to design your meetings around that, then you start to create meetings that are productive work experiences. A lot of what we see in blogs and other places is people saying, well, you need to eliminate your meetings and you need to shorten them. And while that may be true, we're not saying that there aren't meetings that need to be eliminated or that you can't shorten some meetings. If that's all you do, then what you have is fewer bad meetings, but you still have bad meetings as a result. So we thought we had something to say that was different. We had a model that was different, and our clients were kind of saying to us, well, when are you going to write your book about this?
So, Dick, what makes, I guess this next question is going to be a little bit different in the fact that we're asking basically for the format that you would suggest. How do you recommend the reader engage with your book? Is this one that they should, jump in and jump out, cherry picking information as needed, or did you really design it to be read from front to back?
Well, as much as we'd like people to read it from front to back, we know that that's not going to happen. So it is possible to pick out different chapters, and like we have a chapter on first aid for meetings. The person who talks too much, or the meeting that goes off tracks. And if that's your thing you want some immediate relief for, you can just jump in that chapter without the other parts. We'd love it if you read it front to back because we think that's the best experience. But if you want an overview of our basic model, the meeting canoe, you can jump in there. If you're a leader and you're wanting to look for some tips on leading meetings, you can just jump in there. So you could do that. And I think one thing we're learning as authors these days is, given the web and everything, people tend to want to go where their interest is and not necessarily, read something from cover to cover as much as we'd like them to do that.
Absolutely. Yeah. And now that we know the purpose behind the book, a little bit of the background, let's take a deep dive into the content itself. So please, take myself and the future reader and give us a great understanding of what your book's all about. Will you do that for us?
Sure. So one way we start with this notion that meetings are places where you can get work done. So the first chapter is about how to get your work done in meetings. And there we talk about these concepts: autonomy, meaning, challenge, learning, and feedback. And we ask the reader to think about those when they design their meetings. Where the light went on for us about this concept is that Emily and I were giving a talk in Edinburgh, and the CEO of a video game manufacturer came up to us and said, those are the same concepts that we use when we try to make video games engaging. So, we had this concept of, we know that these concepts of meaning, challenge, learning, autonomy, and feedback are what creates productive work on the factory floor. We know it works in video games, and we think that when you apply those to the meeting and conceive of the meeting as work, they work there. Then we have a chapter that introduces the meeting canoe, which is our major framework for the design of meetings. And the canoe consists of 6 parts about how you welcome people, how you connect people to each other in the task. So these first 2 parts are creating the environment or building the foundation for productive work. And then we have 2 parts that we talk about: one, discovering the way things are, and eliciting people's dreams. So that's essentially, if you looked at the canoe from the top, that would be the widest part. And then you have to decide. What we found is that the decision rules for a meeting really need to be clear up front and in advance. The one thing that makes people really mad is to think they were in a participative process when in fact they weren't. And the last piece is attending to the end. How do you bring closure to the meeting so that it's a good experience? So we've got an overview of the meeting canoe, and then we've got a chapter each devoted to welcome, connecting people to each other in the task, discovering the way things are, eliciting people's dreams, which we really were talking about here is their hopes for the future, deciding, and then attending to the end, and what makes a good ending for the meeting, which is reviewing the decisions that were made, identifying the next steps, and taking a time to reflect and really think about what your experience was in this meeting. Was it time well spent? And how we can make future meetings more effective. So that's the heart of the book. And then we have a chapter called Meeting Basics. And Meeting Basics, we're really talking about the things you need to do ahead of time. So the first question is to ask is this meeting really necessary? And, can you really, is it worth bringing these number of people together for the amount of time that you're considering doing that? One of our clients, Eric Lindblad at Boeing, has a criteria where he says he only has meetings when there's information to be shared and that information requires discussion. So that's kind of a good ground rule. Then the question is, what's your purpose? And we ask readers to ask themselves, what's going to be different, or what are you trying to create as a result of bringing people together? And that, when you're clear about your purpose, then a lot of other things begin to fall into place. And then we're asking, once you got your purpose, then the issue is, well, who do you include? Who needs to be in this meeting so that we've got the right people present, people with information, people with authority, people with the decision-making processes. And then you got to decide, well, how long are we going to meet, and where are we going to meet? So these are sort of the basic kinds of things that people need to think about when they're, conducting a meeting. And then the last chapters, we have a chapter each devoted to leaders. What are things that leaders can do to be more effective? And one thing we talk about here is, as a leader, using your power wisely. So, as an entrepreneur, you've got in any leader, you've got a lot of power. You name the meeting, you name how long it's going to be, you name the topic, and how you conduct yourself in that meeting is really important. And one of the things we suggest there is that people are often reluctant to criticize the ideas of the leaders. So we say to the leader, one thing that's important is to invite criticism and to make it safe for people to criticize. So you can say things like, well, this is the craziest idea. If I were sitting in your shoes, I would think this is really crazy, or something like that. So you're trying to make it safe. And then you might be in a position of trying to facilitate a discussion. And here, I think the key thing is really to make sure that everybody's voice is heard and that people don't dominate the meeting. And then as facilitators, one of the things the other category is contributors. And oftentimes you might not be the leader of the meeting, but you might be a contributor. And so what can you do when you're in that situation as a contributor to make a meeting effective? So those are the major pieces. And then a lot of people really like our chapter on first aid for meetings, where we're really kind of hitting home these problems that people, the kind of vexing problems, the meeting that goes off track, the people that talk too much, those kinds of things. So the conflict that occurs in the meeting where you're not able, you don't know what to do or how to bring it to a close. So, that's part of the, people seem to really like that chapter. And then the last chapter is what we call our handoff to you, which is where we say, okay, we've said what we can say, and it's now up to you to take this and run with this. Each chapter has some questions and some tips about how to apply it, so that you can read this book as use it as kind of a working document or your own personal training. It's a short book. We designed it so it would be a fast, simple read, because we know these days people are in a hurry and they want to get their answers fast. So that's the book.
So, Dick, first of all, you did an awesome job of taking us through the book, and you cover a ton of content in which I think a ton of people actually overlook. We're always reading books on leadership and entrepreneurship in general, and so many different topics, but I haven't seen a whole lot of books on having an effective meeting and a ton of this content that you actually just talked about. But this next question, I'm asking to break it down even a step further, and that's, if the reader could only take away one concept, principle, or action item out of your entire book or everything that you just discussed with us, what would you want that to be?
I would like them to begin to think about meetings as work experiences. And if you're the entrepreneur, if you're the leader, how do I make this time well spent in a productive work experience for everybody present in the room? And then I think everything else in the book supports that.
Excellent. And do you have a favorite quote from your book?
Yeah, I do. It came out of an experience we were having. We were working with a hospital up in Canada, and they were redesigning their. They were creating a new hospital. So we had architects, and we had patients, and we had physicians and staff all in the room, and we're taking a break. And most of the meeting rooms that you end up in are in these hotels, and they're awful to really support good conversation. So I'm complaining to one of the architects. I'm doing my rant about how hotel meeting rooms are awful. And what he said was how people enter a space and how people leave a space is as important as what happens in a space. So when architects think about design, they think about how are people going to come into this space and how are they going to leave that space? And then they see that as important as how they're going to use the space. And so the light kind of went on for me there. And I thought about, well, that applies to the meeting canoe, how people enter and how people leave. And those are the parts we usually lop off because we don't have time. We don't have time to create a safe environment. We don't have time to really be clear about what we decided or what the next steps are. And then we were working with a group last week, and we had a bunch of canoeists in the room. And one of the people said, yeah, and if you don't enter a canoe right, if you don't get on board right, you're going to sink it. And if you don't leave right, you're going to sink it. Mm-hmm. And we also think that really applies to the meeting canoe and to meetings as well.
Yeah, it's a powerful concept. I can't wait to dive into that more. Do you have, on your guys' website, do you have more information on that concept, or do you guys have a blog that you run?
Yeah. You can go to you can click on the meeting canoe on the website. We have free resources. If you want to test the book, you can download a chapter. There's all kinds of things that are there available. And then if you buy the book, you get a special code that takes you to resources that aren't available to the general public.
Oh, perfect. Okay, very good. So Dick, it wouldn't be a book podcast if I didn't ask you for a book recommendation. So I'm asking, and not just for any book recommendation, I'm asking for a book that created a paradigm shift for you, really impacted your life.
Yeah. I would say Productive Workplaces. This is a book by Marvin Weisbord, and it just had its 25th, the silver anniversary edition. So this is a book it's a classic, and it really takes you through the history of all the different contributors who've looked at how do we create productive workplaces. And as I looked at that, the lights really went on, because early in my career, I worked at General Foods, where we were experimenting with. We were the first company in the U.S. to experiment with self-directed work teams, and so having all those concepts in one book, it's like, if you're interested in creating productive workplaces, if you got this book, my guarantee is it will become a dog-eared resource on your bookshelf. It probably won't sit there very long. I think it's just a great book. I mean, we go back to it often, and it was that book that helped us in our consulting work. One of the things that we do is bring large numbers of people together to affect organizational change. And in that book, Marvin, that was the first time I ever thought about, well, you could actually bring more than 25 people into a room and have something productive happen. And so, we've worked with groups as high as, 200 or 300 in the redesign of organizational processes or organizational structures. And when you do that, you get enormous support and ownership of the product. So that really sort of changed our whole consulting practice around it and eventually our career.
Excellent. Well, thank you for that recommendation. I believe it's the first time it's actually been recommended, so I'm excited to dive into that one and learn more about it. And Dick, before we depart, can you recommend the best way for our listeners to get more information on you and your book, Let's Stop Meeting Like This?
Sure. They can go to our website, which is www.axlerodgroup.com. And then, there's all kinds of articles, resources, some videos, all kinds of things on the website. They can contact me directly at dick@axlerodgroup.com. Or, we even pick up the phone. So you can call us at 847-251-7361.
Excellent. Dick, thank you so much for coming on today and sharing your book with us.
Thanks so much for having me.
Thanks again for listening in today. If you want more information on Dick or his book, Let's Stop Meeting Like This, check out the show notes at the elpodcast.com. And if you want a chance to win the book, become a VIP.
Looking for your next book idea? Head over to the elpodcast.com, where Wade shares his amazing resource, the top 10 business books recommended by over 500 entrepreneurs, with you for free. That's the elpodcast.com. Till the next time, keep it on the EL.